Before we start in the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Alrighty, so we are still on the topic of the 12 links of dependent origination, or just dependent origination. So we've covered the first 2 so far of ignorance. So as we should know, ignorance, as we discussed, is just not seeing reality as it is. And the volition are the intentional habits or tendencies or the karmic patterns that arise from that. Because we often say that, I am conscious, or my consciousness is who I really am, or there must be some permanent awareness behind this head or inside of me, right? But the Buddha, as usual, asks us to look a little bit more deeply into that and do a little bit more investigation. So he's asking us, what is consciousness, right? Does consciousness exist independently? Is consciousness permanent? Is consciousness a self, right? So through that permanent soul or an unchanging essence, right? It is a conditioned process of knowing. So it arises when the appropriate causes and conditions are present. It changes as those conditions change, and it ceases once those conditions cease. And this insight is pretty essential because most of our attachment is rooted in that belief that there are changes, right? But as usual, the Buddha doesn't ask us to believe in this blindly, right? Or to accept it or reject this idea blindly, but to look directly, right? Do the investigation necessary for us to come to that realization on our own. So consciousness, vijnana, is just like every other Sanskrit or Pali word that we have, has potentially several meanings, but my own translation of vijnana or vijnana in Sanskrit or vijnana in Pali is consciousness, right? Or awareness or cognizance in this English language of ours. But simply put, consciousness is simply the knowing of an object, right? Because when the eye encounters visible form, there's eye consciousness that arises. When the ear encounters sound, ear consciousness arises. Same with the nose would smell, tongue would taste, body with physical sensation, mind with thoughts or memory or images, all arise their respected consciousnesses, right? And so in Buddhism, traditionally, there's that. Tradition, body and mind consciousness. So consciousness itself is not a single solid thing that's inside of us, right? It's an ongoing process that arises dependent upon conditions, right? So for example, when we hear the bell ring, right, there are several conditions that are present in this process of the bell being rang. Because the ear is functioning, there's a sound also stops, right? So the consciousness of hearing isn't permanent, right? It arises with conditions and it disappears when those conditions disappear. And so the central teaching of dependent origination as a whole is the simple gatha of when this exists, that becomes to be. And when this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases, right? So consciousness functions upon conditions. Imagine a flame, for instance, right? The flame depends on fuel, it depends on oxygen, depends on heat, depends on the right conditions for that flame to combust, right? And without those conditions, then that flame would not exist. Same thing with the conditions that create flowers or literally anything that exists by itself, right? It's a process that depends upon conditions, causes and conditions. And when those conditions for seeing are present, then seeing consciousness arises. When the conditions for hearing are present, then the hearing consciousness arises. When a memory appears, right, the mind consciousness arises according with that memory. But this is why the Buddha never unchanging. The consciousness, on the other hand, is conditioned. It is changing, it is dependent, and it is momentary, right? And what is conditioned cannot be permanent. And so that brings us to the important task of realizing that consciousness is not the same as a self, right? Because we often assume that this is an unchanging I. Where is this unchanging experiencer, right? Is it the body? Because the body changes. Is it feelings? Because feelings arise and disappear. Is it perception? Because perceptions also change. Are there mental formations that create our habits and our thoughts? Those also change, right? And is it consciousness? Well, consciousness also changes moment to moment, right? Those are the 5 aggregates, 5 skandhas: form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. And so the consciousness that knows a consciousness that you have today, right? So there is continuity, but that continuity is not the same as permanence. And we can go back to the example of like the river, right? We can give a river a name. We can see it flow as this continuous phenomena. And scoop it up again. We can't say that that's the same river, right? It's consciousness of that river is flowing. It's constantly changing. And because it's constantly changing, it cannot be permanent. It cannot be the same. And so in that same way, consciousness appears to be one continuous awareness, right? But it is constantly changing according to conditions. And the Buddhist teaching of non-self doesn't mean that nothing is experienced, because experience clearly occurs, right? But it means that within that experience, that we cannot find a permanent, independent owner who controls every process. So that brings us to a bigger question of, why does consciousness feel like this one continuous me, right? Partly because experience happens so quickly that the mind kind of creates a sense of continuity, right? Same way if we imagine a movie, right? The movie may appear as one of individual awareness rises, and the mind connects those moments through our memory, through recognition, through habit, through language, through identification. And then we say that this is the same person, or that this is my continuous consciousness, or this is who I've always been, right? Because there is a practical continuity. Continuity. There's a practical continuity there. But we have to require an unchanging self, right? A candle may light another candle, right? And the second flame is connected to the first, but it is not identical to it, right? And so in the same way, each moment conditions the next. And so there is continuity. The other links that we will go through are the ones that we have already gone through. the question of why does this matter arise, especially for dependent origination. But it matters because we often cling to consciousness as this me or mine, right? And we say that my thoughts define me, that my emotions are who I am, that my memories are my identity, that what I experience must belong to me. A wonderful thought may appear, and we may say that I'm a fearful person, or there may be anger that arises and saying I'm an angry person, or confusion, or whatever it may be, right? The mindfulness allows us to see it differently. So instead of attaching to it, we simply can say, a memory is present, or fear is present, or anger is present, right? Or confusion is present. Just by simply removing that personal self from the equation. And we begin to see consciousness as a process, right, rather than a permanent self. And through meditation, it allows us to observe that consciousness directly. So we can be able to sit quietly, and when a sound arises, we know the sound is there, right? And the sound will disappear. A thought arises, we know the thought is there, and it will disappear. A sensation may arise, and experience replaces it, right? Everything arises and ceases, comes and goes. And so as we continue observing, we discover an important lesson there, that consciousness does not remain fixed on one object, right? It shifts, it changes, it moves. The mind may say that I am thinking, but the practice is not to force consciousness to stop. The practice is to understand its conditioned nature. And so in the 12 links, the second link of volition or mental formation conditions consciousness. And because of ignorance, that intentional habits, the karmic tendencies arise. Our past habits influence what we notice, how we interpret events, and how we respond to them. So for example, if we take two people who are listening to the same criticism, right? One person may say or think that, oh, I'm being attacked. While the other person may be thinking, oh, maybe there's something to learn here, right? It's the same sound, but the experience is shaped differently because the mind has different formations, right? So our conditioning influences our consciousness. And if we repeatedly cultivate anger, if we cultivate mindfulness, then that consciousness becomes clearer and less reactive. This doesn't mean that we can control every experience, but it does mean that the conditions we cultivate influence how our experience unfolds. So every moment of consciousness is an opportunity for us. So when a pleasant experience arises, right, we can observe that a pleasant feeling is present. It's too many P's. Present feeling is present. Arises, we know that an unpleasant feeling is present. And we don't have to reject that or become averse to it either. Same, bored or seek constant stimulation, right? Consciousness becomes a field where our wisdom and understanding of it can grow. So the question isn't, how can I control every experience? The question then becomes, can I know the experience clearly without being trapped by it? Right? As we've discussed briefly before, the three marks of existence of impermanence, suffering, and non-self, consciousness itself reveals those three marks. As we start to contemplate on it, right? So impermanence, as we already know, anicca, is that every moment of consciousness, nothing remains fixed, right? And suffering or unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, Because consciousness is unstable and changing, it cannot provide permanent security either. So if we try to hold on to pleasant experiences, we suffer when they disappear, right? Or if we resist unpleasant experiences, well, we suffer because they're already present, right? And then non-self, of course, is where consciousness is not thoughts to be present, to arise, right? To never let fear appear, to never remember the past, right? We cannot command those. And so thoughts and experiences arise according to condition. The third link leads to the fourth, right, of conscious conditions, name and form, nama rupa. Name, for the fourth link here, refers to mental processes, just like feeling, perception, intention, contact, attention. And form refers to the physical form, right, the material body. And in consciousness and name and form are one another. And without consciousness, then without consciousness, experience can't be known, right? We can't have an experience without consciousness. And without body and mind, then consciousness has no field for it to even arise into, right? They function together through conditions. And I wrote a slightly long gatha about consciousness. So I'm just going to read it verbatim. So I wrote that consciousness is not a permanent soul. It is not an unchanging identity. It is not a fixed observer hidden behind. It changes as conditions change. It seizes when conditions cease. When we understand this, we do not become detached from life in a cold or indifferent way. Instead, we become freer. We can experience joy without grasping. We can experience pain without creating a permanent identity around it. We can observe thoughts without believing every thought. We can allow emotions to arise without becoming. If consciousness is not a permanent self, the deeper question is, what becomes possible when I stop needing every experience to define who I am? And if we begin to discover then we begin no need to create a permanent seer. There is hearing, but no need to create a permanent hearer. There is thinking, but no need to create a permanent thinker. There is experience, but no fixed self needs to be found within it. That's my conclusion to my meditation on consciousness. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts.
Seer, or the seer, like omniscient seer.
Soul.
Yeah, like there's no necessarily finish line to get to as far as consciousness goes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Can you rephrase that question?
Yes, there's no omniscient process.
Correct. There's no permanent identity.
Right.
That's what you're referring to. Yeah. There's no permanent identity or soul that's within us. There's no little man inside our head, controlling our every thought, feeling, or move.
Well, I guess there's no point to get to where I guess something I guess nothing.
Yes and no. I want to say no because then it may come across as sounding. There's no point, right? It sounds. What's the word? Nihilistic, right? And so if we have a nihilistic mindset, then we come to the conclusion of, well, why does it matter? Might as well go kill. Is to not detach from things necessarily, but detach from the belief that they are permanent, that they are like a finish line, right, for us. But instead, whether we believe, like I am on the fence of, this is just me personally, I'm on the fence about rebirth. Then again, we may have that nihilistic view of like, well, why? Who the F cares, right? Let me kill everybody. As much as we may feel like that sometimes, right, because of frustration or anger or whatever, but put that aside. How should I put this? If we put that aside of, well, why doesn't it not matter? You can ask, well, what does matter? Right? If doing good or doing bad has no consequence, we're good people, right? The evil people that are out in the world are very insignificant, really, right? It's a very small percentage, but most people are good people. Most people have some sort of moral values or wanting to, help or take care or whatever it may be, right? And so, or hell, there's no rebirth that'll come back in a better or worse life. Well, then what am I doing? What's the point? For me, it's simply the extinguishment of and breaking this chain. They're the most suffering people to exist. More money, more problems. Right? Because we unfortunately live in a society and live in a culture where that capitalistic mindset is what governs. They're feeding you things that will intentionally take your true happiness away by feeding you false hope, feeding you impermanent happiness, right? Because through our practice, meditation, external or outside of yourself, there's not a single person that will ever make you forever happy. There's not a single thing that will forever make you happy. There's not a single place that will forever make you happy. It will make you happy momentarily, while you're conscious, while you're aware, while you're in a good mood. But anything opposite of that, where's that happiness? Where did it go? Right? Because when you're in an argument with anyone you love, momentarily, that true love you have for them disappears just a bit. Because we're in an argument, and what happens in the mindset of an argument? You want to.
The ego is involved.
The ego is heavily involved, right? It's trying to defend itself. And so if we understand consciousness correctly, consciousness again is simply the awareness of what is happening. And if you attach to that wrong perception of, I have to defend myself, or I have to show that I'm right, or I have to show how much I love them, or how much I don't love them, whatever it may be, for what? To win? To get ahead? Important? Self-aware even? Right? But this isn't just mundane aspects, right? There's a lot of, even spiritually, people have spiritual ego too, right? But our practice, whatever this is, whether it's anger, love, pleasure, pain, anything, and if we're able to disconnect the self from it, then it has zero power. The only reason anyone can ever make you happy or unhappy, make you angry or sad or excited. Your expectation of whatever that circumstance is has either been met or has not been met. And so you react according to your perception, according to what's in consciousness. But if we disconnect that selfhood from anything and just accept things for what they are, and that's the point of life. Whether you come back in the next life or not, whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter, right? To me, it doesn't matter. Even if I fully believed in rebirth, I would never say, oh, just live a good life so you can have a better next life. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. No, live a life so you have the best life you can right here and right now, because this is the only life you can control. Other things that have caused us to suffer, the only reason you allow it, the only reason it's causing you to suffer is because you're continuing to allow it to let you suffer. Right? How many times have we had an argument with someone and 3 days later we're like, oh, I should have said this. I should have done that. This should have been my negative turmoil, emotional turmoil. So instead, it is what it is.
So would you say in consciousness, there is a choice because it aligns with cause and effect?
Yes. Yes. Because in consciousness is where our so when we have awareness, we have power over decision making. If we have no awareness, then I mean, just think of it. Think of the auto reactions we have, or the automatic, or the you did from your waking moment last weekend. No, right? You know you woke up. You know you've hopefully took a shower and brushed your teeth and put clothes on. But we don't remember detail. We may not remember in what order we've done it. And so when reactions are habitual and automatic, and when you run your mouth before you're able to think of it, there's no awareness there. And that no awareness is what can potentially cause suffering. Because if there was awareness and mindfulness, then we have time to reflect on what the mind is going through before it's spoken. Okay?
But irrespective of that, the consequences of the cause and effect living the same life, the same before you die, like you said, rich people are not very happy, they are free. And that's what is consciousness, whatever. You will be consciousness like bad things they do. But on the other side, there's no good and bad. It's very related. It's like good today, it should be bad tomorrow, and it's reverse.
Right.
So like you said, most people are good, but you can say no, most people are bad too. You can say even the common observer is made for to protect the society or something, so people don't do the unwholesome things.
Mm-hmm.
All the time, so people are aware of whatever they're doing like in favor of, like you said, kill everything.
Right.
And,
right. There are more teachings in reference to karma in Buddhism about changing your karma for your present life, merit or good deeds or good karma for you to have a better future life. And there are many references, historical references of people during his time that were murdered. when it comes to precepts or anything that has to do with morality, the no killing is always number one, right? And so there's already an inherent aspect where doing good is more beneficial. And so when we speak on karma, it's simply the act of cause and effect, right? The phenomenon of cause, participate and do this and that, you get good grades, you're able to graduate. If you're skipping class, if you're, not paying attention, not doing your homework, you're most likely going to fail, and it's going to take you longer to graduate if you graduate at all, right? And so your actions, right, that has a direct consequence, negative consequence potentially, most likely, 99.999% of the time, right? And so it's not about thinking of what would happen or what will happen if I do good or bad. It's just knowing that, right? It's not a fixed, what's the word? Fate, no, not fate. What's the other word? Destiny, right? Our destiny isn't fixed. Because nothing's permanent. Destiny refers to something that is permanent. We have allowance to change, to do better. And so our biggest allowance is knowing that our suffering can change into suffering. I hope. If you do, then we'll probably need medication and professional help. But other than that, nobody wants to suffer. So if you don't want to suffer, right, what's the response when we have contact with things? How do we feel about it? How do we attach or not attach to it, right? We'll see how everything connects. That's why they're called links, because they're all connected to each other.
For example, crocodile
it's not possible. So they are, for some people's mind, they're going to become wholesome. And so like in Buddha teaching, the first thing is killing the butcher. I mean, you have to kill to feed people. And you can never receive that first precept. So it's very crocodile is Buddha. To survive. But there's but for us, like seeing them as they are, or our consciousness in such a way we don't be judgmental, but at the same time protect the whole Sangha community, so
We're recognizing that nothing is inherently good or bad, right? Through our evolution or whatever it may be, most people think that killing is bad, right? Generally speaking, whether it's people, animals, plants, anything, right? The precepts aren't there to say that the person that kills is bad, right? The precepts aren't rules, they're not commandments, they're not laws, right? So the precepts of not intentionally, but accidentally, whether they were speeding or they caused an accident, someone died. A lot of people get trauma from that, right? Because they've taken someone else's life, and so they're longing over that loss for however long, right? And sometimes it is sort of to that, anything to cover up that trauma or cover up that feeling of whatever they're going through, right? Same thing with lying, right? Sometimes when we lie, we feel bad about it, right? Or when we steal, we'll feel bad about it, or badness. But we know through understanding, through observation, that if we refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from lying and sexual misconduct and intoxicants, there's nothing there to cause any negativity, any suffering, right? And so if we, when it comes back to your questions, it's no idea why. And really, you have no right to know unless they've freely given you that information. And so it comes down to the point, it comes back to the very first link of ignorance, right? We are all born at the default level of being ignorant, right? That's our default setting. it's, you know, learning or observing or even experiencing that we know what things are good or bad, what things are beneficial, what things are helpful, and what things are not. And by that process of elimination, we better ourselves, right? And hopefully, if we have the opportunity to tell some, this is from an outside perspective, this is what I'm seeing, hearing, or feeling, and maybe other people feel, see, or hear the same thing, you may want to adjust your attitude, or whatever it may be, right? I mean, just think of when, I'm sure you've had to discipline your daughter, correct? Your correction's only correct to you because you feel like this, you feel what she did was wrong or bad. I may just see as, but again, we don't know the suffering of others. We are just as ignorant as they are. That's all that is. If you see that, then you just have a nonchalant attitude about things. All right, cool. You want to do that? Go for it. You want to say that? Say it. Unless you can some harm that comes from it, right? Go for it. Of course, do that. But most likely we can't ever be able to control others. Okay, we're out of time. Namo Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo Shakyamuni.